Ah, yes, phones. If there's one thing that I'm also good at talking about, it would be phones. And I'm going to rank all of my phones that I've ever used ever since 2012. Again, I don't really remember anything prior to 2012 that much, mostly because I was too goo goo gaga. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First of all, we got the 2010 Nokia C6. I got this at around 2012. It was a hand-me-down phone, but it had a 3.2-inch screen, 5 megapixel camera, 240 megabytes of RAM. It's not even gigabytes at this point, it's megabytes. It's megabytes. We have 2 gigabytes of storage and a ARM 11 processor at 434 megahertz. This really couldn't do that much. It couldn't run Minecraft, something that I really wanted to run at the time. It could only do basic web browsing and YouTube at 240p or 360p. It was meh, but it did the job. The camera quality is meh too, but again, it just does the job for the time. So all in all, I'd rate it a B tier. Not too bad, not too good. Then we have the 2014 DTC GT18. I got this phone after the Nokia became too obsolete. Thank you iPhone, thank you Android. The DTC GT18 had a 5-inch screen, 8 megapixel camera, 512 megabytes of RAM, 4 gigabytes of storage, and a dual core something processor at 1 gigahertz. This phone is quite obscure, mostly because it was a bad phone. It really was a bad phone. Everything that I ran on it was laggy. It did YouTube okay, did 480p, thumbs up, but for the time, it was really underwhelming. So for that, I would give it a D tier. Then a year later, we have the Lenovo A2010. You know me, I love ThinkPads. I like to chill on Lenovo. But I don't like Lenovo for this one. It had a 4.5-inch screen, 5 megapixel camera, 1 gigabyte of RAM, 8 gigabyte of storage, and a MediaTek MT6735M. It was good. Eh. So for it, I'm gonna give it a C tier. Also because I didn't own it for that long and it had to be yoinked from me. Then we get to the 2014 Oppo Neo that I got a year later. This boy had a 4.5-inch screen, 5 megapixel camera, 512 megabytes of RAM, 4 gigabytes of storage, and a dual-core 1.3 gigahertz processor. This boy, I had it for a long time. Probably about 6 months, I guess. And this is around the time where, I don't know, time just gone very slow. So 6 months felt like a long time. And this boy introduced me to Geometry Dash, made me play some Pixel Gun 3D, Pixel Racer, something like that. Pixel Car Racer, something like that. It's like a car game, a lot of car games, and it ran YouTube pretty well. Even though if it's slightly slower than the A2010, I had a much more enjoyable experience, maybe because I had it on my hands for a longer time. So for that, I'm going to give it an A tier. Then around the same time, I got lent a phone alongside the Oppo Neo, which is the Oppo R1. This boy had a 5-inch screen, 8 megapixel camera, 1 gigabyte of RAM, and 16 gigabytes of storage with a MediaTek MT6582. I don't really know the exact specs of the MT6582, but it was good. It was alright. It did the games that I wanted to play. Overall, I don't really have any complaints with it other than me not having it for that long. So I'll give it a C tier. Then we get to one of the most memorable phones that I have ever had. One that is so great, I still have a box of it. I still have the box of it. This boy is the 2015 Asus Zenfone 2. It had a 5.5-inch screen, 13 megapixel camera, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and 64 gigabytes of storage with an Intel Atom Z3580. This boy could do everything that I threw at it. Minecraft? Yeah, sure, it can run that. Pixel gun? Yeah, sure, it can run that. Geometry Dash at 60 FPS? Yeah, go ahead. It's basically the send me everything and I'll win. And it did win. It win my heart a lot. The camera quality, well, it's not iPhone quality. Well, iPhone quality at the time. But it took some really good pictures. And overall, I used it to heck. I used it for 2 years, which is the longest that I've ever used a phone in that time period. So overall, I'd give it an S tier. Then, we get to the 2017 LG Q6. This boy was when it's 2 years. My Asus Zenfone 2 is getting quite slow. Might need the time for an upgrade. So I got myself an LG Q6. This boy had a 5.5-inch screen, a 13 megapixel camera, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage, and a Snapdragon 435. This boy, it was quite underwhelming. This was around the time where why did I buy this phone? It was more of a glorified MP3 player because the headphone jack was very high quality and it played some good quality audio. But for everything else, the Zenfone 2 was better. Even though if it was stuck at Android 6, the LG Q6 was at Android 8. I just felt like the Zenfone 2 was better. Also, this was the time where routing was quite apparent. So I rooted my Zenfone 2 and it unlocked a lot of features. I could customize my Android more. I can run unofficial apps, more unofficial apps that needs root. And I just enjoyed the Zenfone 2 much more. And the Q6, it felt smaller too despite having the same inches. Maybe because the aspect ratio is more taller. So I got a taller phone but a less wider phone, if that makes sense. So meh. And for that, I would give it a B tier. Then 2 years later, I was both using the Zenfone 2 and the Q6 in tandem, but both of them got phased out by 2019 because of the 2019 Samsung Galaxy A70. Ah yes, I love this phone as well. It had a 6.7-inch screen that is AMOLED, so I got to see stuff that is very black and stuff that's just very contrasty. I love the screen of the A70. It had a 32 megapixel camera, 6 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage, which felt like a frick ton at this time, and a Snapdragon 765. All in all, I had so much fun with this phone. I played a lot of simulation games. I played a lot of odd games. Watching YouTube, scrolling down Reddit, scrolling down Twitter was amazing on this phone. I got to see so many media. It felt like I had a TV screen on my hands. I loved it. But it doesn't capture the same amount of nostalgia that I had on the Zenfone 2. Also, minus points for the A70 because this boy kind of gone with me through the pandemic, and the pandemic was not a good time for any of us. So because of that, I would give it an A tier. It's still a good phone though. I miss it. I still have this phone though. I still have this, but it had been water damage around 2022 and now it's not working anymore. So that's sad. Foreshadowing? I'm not sure. After this, I gone to some sort of iPhone era, and for that, that's another video. So stay tuned. So skip around 4 years, the end of the pandemic, and I'm like, what if we try Android yet again? So we tried Android yet again with the 2023 Tecno Camon 20 Pro 5G. That is a mouthful to say. It had a 6.67-inch screen, 64 megapixel camera with 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage, and a Dimensity 8050. The specs seem super impressive, but it sucked. People were hyping this phone a lot. And I mean, I get the hype. It's a good value phone for um price range. But other than its speed, it kind of sucks. The storage speed was slow. The camera fogged up whenever you put anything remotely cold next to it. So if you're in a cold area, the camera's gonna condense and you're gonna have poo poo pictures. Might be a bad unit from me, but I didn't like it at all. So for that, I'm giving it a C tier for how disappointing it is. It only has one redeeming quality, that I sold it, and it gave me enough money to buy the 2020 LG V60 ThinQ 5G. Why are the names so long on Android phones? But I digress, it was an amazing phone. It had a 6.8-inch screen, 64 megapixel camera, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 128 gigabytes of storage with a Snapdragon 865 5G. I love this phone. I love it. This had a very big screen, same thing as the A70, but this time it had that LG screen quality. It was great. I don't know what is a better screen, but it just hits right. It just hits right with the LG. This was around the time that 128 gigabytes kind of felt lacking for my use case, since I'm very heavy on installing apps, trying to make high resolution videos, taking high resolution pictures. But with everything else, it was amazing. I threw any game at it. It was better than the Tecno Camon 20 Pro 5G. It played Genshin Impact amazingly. It ran at 60 FPS at medium settings. I think also high and ultra, but I was a bit uncomfortable with how high the settings were. That's how good it was. I was scared to floor it. The camera quality was compared to the iPhones that I've tried around this time, but it was still great. And because of it, I'm giving it an S tier. Good job, LG. Please make more phones again. I missed you. After this, I kinda took a break with Android phones yet again. But this was around the time where I really liked offloading apps, which is like a year ago. No, not really a year ago, more like a couple of months ago. And you can't really sideload apps on iPhone. So I decided, you know what? I guess I'll just get another Android phone then. Plus, I feel like 6.7 inches on an iPhone felt kinda small. So I got a 2020 Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Heck yeah. So it had a 6.9-inch screen, nice, 108 megapixel camera, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and 512 gigabytes of storage with a Snapdragon 865 5G Plus. What does the plus stand for? It's overclocked. So this boy could do whatever the V60 ThinQ had, and better. What I don't like about it though is the screen. The screen likes to break itself a lot. It's broken on the Note 20 Ultra right now. Has like this kind of weird halo effect. They said Note 20 Ultras do that, and I don't like Note 20 Ultras doing that. This is also because I got the Note 20 Ultra in a very bad time, in a very desperate time, where it's just not good. I'll explain more in a future video. Which meant the Note 20 Ultra got through so many dirt. And I feel like it's on its last legs. I just looked at the phone. Because it has been wet so many times, been repaired so many times. Well, it was sort of broken when I bought it, and I had to repair it, then I broke it, then I repaired it. But not everything is really working anymore. It sucks, but hey, it's an Android phone, still does whatever I need to do, and it plays games just great. And for that, I'd give it a B tier. So all in all, my Android experience is great. I would most likely get a Android phone after I phase out both of my current phones right now, which is the iPhone 15 Plus, the one that I am recording now, and the Note 20 Ultra when it kicks the bucket. I suspect 2 weeks from now. But don't worry, don't worry. I won't be getting a new phone until probably 2025 at this point. So, yeah. If you guys have any fun stories with your past phones or your current phones, please share your story down below in the comments. I will be talking about the other phones that I haven't mentioned in this list in the next video. So stay tuned for that. And if you haven't watched any of my other videos other than this, please check out my playlist where I review all of the ThinkPads that I've owned, all of the laptops that I've owned, and all of the PC builds that I've owned. So this is Fuukattofumei signing out. I really enjoyed talking with you guys, and I might explode.